Daggerheart may be the first new game to come along with a legitimate claim to the title of D&D Killer. As a GM and industry watcher, I gotta say, maybe. Hey there, adventurers. My name is Judd, and this is Short Rest Studios, where we believe fun builds community. Daggerheart, the new fantasy TTRPG from Darrington Press, the publishing arm of Critical Role, was released last month to a ton of hype and rave reviews, intensifying the existing debate over whether it has a genuine shot at dethroning Dungeons & Dragons. Today we're going to dig into what really sets Daggerheart apart, and I'll give you my honest opinion. Is Daggerheart a D&D killer? Stick around for my final answer. So what makes Daggerheart unique and gives it a real shot at taking the most popular TTRPG spot from D&D? First of all, it's from Critical Role, and most of us are probably aware that along with Stranger Things, the mega popular actual play show shares a lot of responsibility for the upsurge in D&D's popularity in recent years. Critical Role has a lot of clout. And right now, the show is in the middle of an 8-part miniseries, Age of Umbra, in which they're playing Daggerheart, not D&D. Notice that they didn't just make a full-on jump to their own game. This is clearly strategic. They want to see how the show does with Daggerheart at its core. If it does well, and I believe it will, we may see a permanent switch. Putting the game at the center of Critical Role and using the show's popularity to market it may actually give it a legitimate shot at dethroning D&D. But what about the game itself? Daggerheart boasts its own core dice mechanic. D&D relies on the D20 to resolve pretty much any action. Daggerheart, on the other hand, uses a 2D12 system. The outcome is determined by the total of 2D12s plus modifiers. That doesn't sound like a huge difference, but there's more to it. And that more actually creates the biggest mechanical difference between the two games. We'll get to it further down the list. Daggerheart's combat system is completely unlike D&D's. Much has already been made of the fact that Daggerheart doesn't have initiative. Players decide when they act, and this can give combat more of a narrative feel. That's not the only difference, though. Daggerheart characters have significantly fewer hit points than D&D PCs. In D&D, damage is measured in hit points, but Daggerheart uses a damage threshold system where minor, major, and severe damage dictates the number of HP the PC loses. Characters also have armor slots, a limited resource they can use to reduce the level of damage done to them. Hey, have you played Daggerheart? How do you think it stacks up against D&D? Let me know in the comments. In Daggerheart, characters have stress slots. Some characters will have abilities that require them to use stress slots, and some will use slots when they attempt something that'll affect them mentally or emotionally. When they run out, they lose a hit point. The closest thing D&D has to this is the exhaustion system. A closer analogy would probably be a game like Mothership or the Alien RPG, which have their own stress mechanics. The next one could be a video in its own right, so I'll try to condense it as much as possible without leaving out anything important. It's Daggerheart's character creation and progression. Characters have classes and foundations, which function like subclasses that define their core abilities. They choose a heritage, which is a combination of ancestry, the equivalent of species in D&D, and their community. Their heritage can give them some unique features and augment some of their abilities. Then, of course, they have 6 core traits: agility, strength, finesse, instinct, presence, and knowledge, as well as their starting hit points and stress. There are narrative experiences that add to the character, and players choose abilities from domain cards based on their class. And of course, there's equipment, connections to other PCs, and the like. Traditionally, characters gain XP to level up in D&D, but in Milestone, leveling is also an option. In Daggerheart, it's strictly Milestone. On top of that, Daggerheart characters top out at 10 levels. Characters gain skills, hit points, and attribute increases and the like as they level up, just as in most TTRPGs, but their damage thresholds also increase at every level up. With fewer levels and a ton of customization choices to make when characters advance, Daggerheart's aim is to make every level up feel significant, and that's definitely not the case in D&D. I promised you I'd get to the biggest, most significant mechanical difference, and here it is. Daggerheart's hope and fear system. When you roll those 2d12s, they aren't just added together, they have critical roles. to play in a resource system that's unlike anything in D&D. Sure, some D&D classes have resources like Chief or Monks, but Daggerheart's Hope and Fear apply to everyone. One of your D12s is the Hope die, and the other, the Fear die. Not only does the overall value of the roll affect the outcomes, but so does which of the two is higher. This creates 4 possible outcomes for every roll. Success with Hope. The player succeeds in the task and gains a Hope resource. Success with Fear. The player succeeds in the task, but the GM can add a complication and gains a Fear resource. Failure with Hope. The player doesn't succeed, but the outcome isn't too bad and they gain a Hope resource. And Failure with Fear. The player fails, it's pretty bad, and the GM gains a Fear resource. Players can gain up to 5 Hope and use those resources to help their friends or activate abilities. GMs, on the other hand, can use those Fear resources to complicate the narrative. The system encourages GMs to improvise, making it harder to railroad your players and raises the narrative stakes. Stakes. Daggerheart really is its own system. There are way more differences than I could cover in this video. The cumulative effect is that Daggerheart is firmly focused on narrative. As bad as D&D combat can be at times, I think that's still its bread and butter. Mechanically, D&D doesn't really do much for the narrative aspects of gameplay. Daggerheart is definitely a compelling and significant addition to the tabletop role-playing hobby, but is it a D&D killer? I truly believe fun builds community, and I can't build this community alone. Please consider joining the Adventurers Guild at patreon.com/shortreststudios or by hitting the join button right under this video. You'll become integral to keeping the cameras rolling on this channel. And to show you my gratitude, you get access to a guild-only Discord channel, guild member shoutouts, the magic item of the month, and even quarterly adventure seeds to fuel your further TTRPG adventures. Again, please check out patreon.com/shortreststudios or hit the join button and help me make more fun and grow the Short Rest Studios community. Personally, I think Daggerheart is a unique and interesting system. I love the Hope and Fear mechanics, the way crits work, which is another difference. Even using different dice is cool, but to be honest, I don't think the game's mechanics really have that much to do with its potential to unseat D&D as the most popular role-playing game. But the first difference I mentioned is an important one, and it's Daggerheart's biggest advantage in the industry. It's got the muscle of Critical Role behind it. Matthew Mercer and company have been streaming this show for a decade. They have almost 1.5 million followers on Twitch and almost 2.5 million YouTube subscribers. They've got over 1 billion views on YouTube alone. Yes, that's billion with a B. Look, if you're into TTRPGs, I'm sure I don't actually need to tell you how huge Critical Role is. But it's also more than a show. These are savvy business people. They've created a strong, resilient brand. They've got a publishing arm, industry partners. They have a freaking animated series, for crying out loud. They're talented. They know how to market. And we've already seen all this have an impact. Initial sales of Daggerheart are through the roof. As of the recording of this video, it's sold out on the Critical Role website and Amazon. And listen, there are some YouTubers out there who already believe D&D is in trouble. But what about D&D? Dungeons & Dragons has been around for 50 years. It's never been the only role-playing game in town, but it's one of the most recognizable brands in the world. While evidence of poor sales of the 2024 core books is pretty compelling, D&D still has tons of online and print resources, settings, adventures, all things Daggerheart can build over time, as they're already doing with their online card builder and an open license for third-party publishing. But D&D already has these things. According to Wizards of the Coast, over 50 million people have played D&D. Critical Role can't come close to that, and many of those people are entrenched in the game. Even if they're not playing the current edition, what's the likelihood that they'll buy into a totally new system? And if they're using D&D Beyond, they're even more entrenched because they've likely got a ton of money invested in game resources that they can only access there. And what about new players? Sure, if they're exposed to Critical Role before joining a game, Maybe they'll choose to play Daggerheart, but I think it's doubtful that it'll see the kind of distribution, at least initially, that D&D has, and that will be a detriment, be an obstacle to new people coming to the game. Is Daggerheart a good game? Yeah. It might be a great game, and it's definitely set itself apart from the pack, and it's already incredibly successful, but is it a D&D killer? Listen, we YouTubers love to throw that term around, especially since the OGL debacle a couple of years ago, but my honest take is no game is a D&D killer, at least not at this point in time. D&D is too recognizable a brand, has too large a dedicated community, and has too much marketing power behind it, even if its parent company has no idea what to do with it as a game or a property. I will happily talk to you about Daggerheart and any other independently produced tabletop role-playing game because they deserve to be recognized. But the only D&D killer out there is Hasbro. But that's a whole other video. Instead of asking if a new game is a D&D killer, maybe just find a game you love. There's plenty to choose from: 2024 D&D, 5th edition, AD&D, Dungeon Crawl Classics, Pathfinder, Shadow Dark, Daggerheart. Find one, gather some friends, and have some fun playing that game. That's what games are for. Thanks so much for watching, adventurers. How do you think Daggerheart stacks up against the powerhouse that is Dungeons & Dragons? Let me know in the comments. If you got something out of this video and you want more of this kind of content, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And please consider supporting this channel by joining the Adventurers Guild at patreon.com/shortreststudios or by hitting that join button right under the video. If you're looking for a new game to love, check out this video where I talk about fantasy TTRPGs with way cooler mechanics than D&D. And I'll see you next time on Short Rest Studios.